Get the heavy black trash bags from the garage and start with the flagstones on the patio. The guests are arriving in 20 minutes. A blonde woman I had never seen in my life barked, sliding my own front door open and thrusting a plastic bucket into my chest. She did not even look at my face. She just saw my muddy boots, my heavy canvas duffel bag, and my worn-out winter coat, and assumed I was the hired help for her evening dinner party. The colonial house she was standing in cost $850,000. My name was on the deed, my personal bank account paid the mortgage, and the leather portfolio in my backpack held the legal paperwork to throw her and her entire family onto the freezing streets of Orchard Park, New York by 9 o'clock tonight. "Where is Clara?" I asked, keeping my voice completely flat, refusing to budge an inch from the threshold. She snorted, rolling her eyes as she adjusted a diamond-dusted watch on her wrist. "The kitchen maid? She is out back on her knees, scrubbing the soot off the outdoor fireplace like she is supposed to be. Don't waste her time. She still has 3 gourmet salads to prep before the first car pulls into the driveway. If you are the window cleaner, go through the side gate, and do not track mud onto the hardwood or I will withhold your tip." That was my mother she was talking about. Clara Vance, 67 years old, 8 months post-hip replacement, and she was kneeling on freezing concrete in 35-degree weather in a black apron while her golden child son and his parasite of a wife threw an upscale wine tasting on her dime. I did not yell. I did not flinch. As a chief trauma surgeon who spent 7 years managing a chaotic intensive care unit in Singapore, I have learned that when a patient is crashing, you do not panic. You stabilize the room, you check the vitals, and then you cut out the rot with clinical precision. I set the bucket down on the pristine marble foyer, walked past the blonde woman, and headed straight toward the back glass doors. "Hey, where do you think you are going?" she screamed behind me, her voice rising to a shrill, entitled pitch. "I told you to use the side gate. Trevor, there is a lunatic in the hallway." I ignored her. I pushed the heavy glass doors open and stepped onto the sprawling stone patio. There she was. My mother was kneeling on a thin piece of damp foam, her hands shaking as she clutched a stiff wire scrub brush. She was wearing a threadbare black apron over a faded wool sweater that I recognized from my college days. Her knuckles were raw, swollen, and stained gray with wet charcoal. The beautiful rose bushes she had planted along the brick wall, the roses she had dreamed of her entire life, had been brutally ripped out and stuffed into cracked plastic buckets in the shadow of the garage to make room for a massive, commercial-grade outdoor heater with the price tags still dangling from the metal mesh. "Mom?" I said. She froze. The wire brush slipped from her fingers and clattered against the stone. When she turned her head, her face lit up with an immediate, blinding joy that made my throat tighten. "Kieran, oh my sweet boy, you are home." But before she could even stand up, her eyes darted toward the glass doors, and a sudden, sickening look of sheer terror washed over her features. She tried to scramble to her feet, wincing in obvious pain as her newly replaced hip locked up. She gripped my forearms with fingers that felt like dry twigs, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "Kieran, you can't be here right now," she whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the windows of the house. They have guests coming. Evelyn is very particular about the presentation. They do not like surprises. Please, honey, let me finish the patio, and then we can walk down to the diner down the road. I can get a break at 8. Just let me finish." "You are not finishing anything, Mom," I said, my voice quiet, steady, and cold. "Get up." "She is not going anywhere until this patio is clean." A deep, arrogant voice boomed from the doorway. My older brother, Trevor Vance, stood there. He was 39 years old, wearing a tailored cashmere sweater, holding a bottle of $80 Cabernet. He looked heavier, softer, and carried the cheap confidence of a man who had spent his entire life spending money he had never actually earned. Behind him stood the blonde woman, Evelyn, her arms crossed over her chest, her face twisted in a smug sneer. "Well, well, the prodigal son returns," Trevor laughed, taking a slow sip from his glass. "We thought you were still hiding out in your sterile little hospital in Asia, Kieran. You didn't even call to say you were landing. But then again, you always did love making an entrance. Why is our mother on her knees in 35-degree weather, Trevor?" I asked, looking him directly in the eyes. She likes to keep busy, Kieran, Evelyn chimed in, stepping forward and placing a patronizing hand on Trevor's shoulder. Seniors need structure. It is good for her joints. Besides, we all contribute under this roof. Trevor manages the estate, I handle the social scheduling, and Clara helps with the household maintenance. It is a system. It keeps things fair. A system, I repeated, my eyes drifting down to the black apron clutched in my mother's raw hands. Yes, a system, Trevor said, his tone turning sharp, warning me to back off. We had to step in because you were never here, Kieran. You write checks from 10,000 miles away and think that makes you a son. I am the one who showed up when she needed her hip done. I am the one who managed the move. If you had been here, you would know that she needs a routine. Now, if you are quite done disrupting our evening, we have the Orchard Park Country Club committee arriving in 15 minutes. Go find a hotel near the airport. We can have a quick cup of coffee on Tuesday morning before you fly back out. I looked at my brother. I looked at Evelyn. I looked at the massive, beautiful house that I had purchased 2 years ago to ensure my mother would never have to worry about a roof over her head again. They had absolutely no idea that I had the original deed in my backpack. They had no idea that their entire, fragile house of cards was about to be crushed into dust before the clock struck 9 tonight. To understand how my mother ended up as a servant in the house I bought her, you have to go back 9 years, to a cramped kitchen in Dayton, Ohio, where the table was buried under a mountain of past-due medical bills. Our father, Roy Vance, had died of a sudden catastrophic coronary on a Tuesday evening. He had spent 40 years working as a heavy machinery mechanic, a man with calloused hands and a quiet heart. But his health insurance had been an absolute joke. When the funeral was over, my mother was 58 years old, working 50 hours a week as a seamstress hemming curtains for wealthy families, and she was sitting on $85,000 of medical debt. I was 26 years old, 2 years into my residency at a busy hospital outside Syracuse, pulling 80-hour weeks and living on black coffee and stale bagels. I gave her every single penny I could spare, but the interest on the debt grew faster than my junior resident paychecks could keep up. Trevor was 31. He was already a real estate consultant, which was a fancy word for running a failing construction company that specialized in buying properties he couldn't afford and leaving subcontractors unpaid. When I asked him to help with Dad's medical bills, he sat in his brand new leased truck and looked at me with an expression of pure, cold condescension. You write checks, Kieran, because you are a coward who hides behind a desk, Trevor had told me, laughing as he revved the engine. I show up. I am building a legacy. I don't have $80,000 to throw into a black hole. Figure it out. So I figured it out. When I was 28, a medical recruitment firm offered me a trauma surgery contract in Singapore. The salary was nearly 3 times what I was making in New York, tax-free, with housing fully covered. I remember sitting in the airport, holding a small tin of homemade chocolate chip cookies my mother had pressed into my hands, realizing that I was leaving the only person who had ever protected me so that I could save her from bankruptcy. I promised her I would be gone for 2 years. 2 years turned into 7. Because the deeper I got into the contract, the more I realized that money was the only shield that could actually keep her safe. I lived in a high-rise apartment where the air conditioning rattled, working 80-hour shifts in a trauma bay where the monitors hummed in languages I didn't speak. I spent my holidays charting vitals on a screen while my family opened presents thousands of miles away. My engagement to a wonderful woman ended in my 3rd year because she politely and correctly pointed out that she couldn't build a marriage with a man who lived in a different hemisphere and slept 4 hours a night. But by my 4th year overseas, I had cleared every single dollar of my father's $85,000 debt. I stood in a sterile hospital stairwell in Singapore, looking at the bank confirmation on my phone, and I did not celebrate. I did not cheer. I cried silently for exactly 5 minutes, washed my face in the staff bathroom, and went back to the operating room. And then, I started saving for the roses. My mother had spent her entire life cleaning houses and sewing curtains for people who lived on the north side of town. When we were kids, she would drive us past those beautiful colonial homes with the deep wraparound porches and the sprawling lawns, and she would slow the car down to a crawl, pointing at the gardens. "Someday," she would whisper, her voice full of a quiet, fragile hope. "A yard with good, strong sun." She never asked for it. She was a woman who lived her life entirely in the background, making sure everyone else was fed, clothed, and warm before she ever took a breath for herself. 2 years ago, I bought her that house. It was a stunning 4-bedroom colonial on Maplewood Court in Orchard Park, New York. $850,000. Deep porch, massive kitchen, and a backyard with 5 hours of uninterrupted morning sun. I put $300,000 down, every single penny I had saved in my Roses account, and took the mortgage entirely in my name, set to autopay from my account in Singapore. I closed on the property over a secure video call at 3 o'clock in the morning, Gulf time, signing the digital deeds while the desert outside my hospital window was still pitch black. My family lawyer in Buffalo, a meticulous 65-year-old man named Arthur Pendleton, handled the paperwork. Arthur had given me one crucial piece of advice over the phone that night. Keep the deed and the title strictly in your name for now, Kieran, he had warned me, his voice gravelly and serious. The world is full of vultures who target older widows who suddenly own valuable property. Keep it protected from any creditors, any of them. We both knew what he meant. Trevor's construction business had filed for restructuring twice in 3 years, but neither of us said his name. The plan was simple. On my next long block of leave, I would fly back. We would set up an ironclad family trust that gave my mother the legal right to live in the house for the rest of her life, and her name would go on the title safely. Until then, my name stayed on the deed, and I kept the purchase completely quiet. My mother told the neighbors her daughter-in-law and son had helped coordinate the move because she didn't want Trevor to feel small or inadequate. I let her say it. Her kindness was her grace. But as I was about to find out, her kindness was also the weapon they used to destroy her. 14 months ago, Trevor's third corporate entity went completely bankrupt. The bank foreclosed on his home, seized his truck, and left him with nothing but a mountain of lawsuits and an incredibly angry circle of former business partners. My mother called me in Singapore on a Sunday morning, her voice trembling over the static line. "Kieran, honey, please don't be angry," she had started. "Trevor and Evelyn, they have lost everything. The bank took the house. They need a place to land for just a few weeks until Trevor gets his new consulting contract signed. The colonial is so big, honey. Can they please stay in the guest rooms?" I set 2 strict verbal conditions on a 3-way call with Trevor that same night. First, the arrangement was strictly temporary, 3 months maximum. Second, Clara was the lady of the house. It was her home. "Of course, Kieran," Trevor had said, his voice dripping with that smooth, calculated charm he used on banks before he defaulted on his loans. "We are going to take better care of Mom than she takes care of us. We will handle the cooking, the yard work, everything. You just focus on saving lives in Singapore. We've got this." And Evelyn's voice had drifted in from the background, sweet as honeyed poison. "We are so incredibly grateful, Kieran. Truly." That was the last time I heard them speak with any trace of respect. Within 3 months, Evelyn's mother, Beatrice, moved into the 4th bedroom. Her landlord had raised her rent by 50%, and she needed a breather. The breather became a permanent relocation. I asked my mother if she was okay with another adult in the house, and there was a long, heavy silence on the line that made my pulse spike. "It is fine, Kieran," she had whispered, her voice sounding small and tired. "The house is very large. There is plenty of space." I should have boarded a plane that day, but my trauma unit was in the middle of a massive international accreditation review, and I was the chief of staff. Walking out meant breaking my contract, losing my medical visa, and abandoning 40 critical patients who depended on my department. I counted down the days to my banked leave like a prisoner counting the notches on a concrete wall. And while I was working 70-hour shifts in Singapore, they were systematically stripping my mother of her humanity. The shift happened 9 months ago, when my mother had her left knee replaced. Trevor called me, his voice warm and efficient. "Kieran, we are setting Mom up in the 1st floor sunroom. The stairs are too dangerous for her new knee. Doctor's orders." It sounded logical. It sounded loving. But it was a calculated, vicious trap. Once she was moved downstairs, her old furniture never came back down with her. Her beautiful dresser, her cedar chest, her oak vanity, they were moved into the master bedroom for Evelyn and Trevor. Her personal phone broke, and Trevor insisted on putting her on his family plan to save money. But the new phone never arrived, and her calls moved entirely to a tablet that sat in the kitchen, where Trevor or Evelyn was always standing at the edge of the screen, monitoring every single word she said. My mother started appearing on our Sunday video calls wearing a dark apron, her hair tied back, her face growing thinner and paler with every passing week. When I asked why she looked so exhausted, Trevor would lean into the frame with a wide, fake smile. "Mom just loves keeping busy, Kieran. You know her. She can't sit still." And my mother would smile at the camera like a hostage reading a scripted statement, her eyes pleading with me not to ask any more questions. 2 weeks ago, my mother's oldest friend from church, a sharp, 70-year-old retired school teacher named Martha, sent me an email. The subject line read, "Clara." "Kieran," Martha wrote, "I don't like to interfere in family matters, but something is very wrong at the Maplewood house. Your mother has stopped coming to service. When I drove by last Tuesday, I saw her carrying 4 heavy bags of mulch across the wet lawn in the freezing rain, while Evelyn sat in her warm car in the driveway, scrolling on her phone. Clara looks half her size, Kieran. Someone is treating your mother like a servant, and I think you need to come home." I read that email in a quiet supply closet during a brutal night shift, and my entire body went ice cold. The accreditation had cleared the day before. I had 3 weeks of banked leave sitting on my file. I booked a flight to Buffalo, told absolutely no one in New York, and called Arthur Pendleton's law firm to schedule an emergency appointment for Friday at 3 o'clock. When my taxi pulled onto Maplewood Court on Friday morning at 10:40, the first thing I saw was a brand new luxury SUV parked in my mother's driveway. It was a $80,000 vehicle, gleaming under the gray New York sky. I walked up the stone steps of the house I bought, my heavy duffel bag slung over my shoulder, and rang the bell. The door was opened by Evelyn. She was wearing a silk robe, holding a steaming mug of coffee, her eyes scanning me from head to toe with immediate, naked disgust. She had posted an online ad that week for a local cleaning service to help prep the house for her country club dinner party. When she saw a tired man in a worn canvas coat and a baseball cap standing on the porch, her brain did not register brother-in-law. Her brain registered labor. "Oh, you are finally here," she said, her voice dripping with annoyance as she stepped back and swung the door open. "You are late. The kitchen is an absolute disaster, and the patio needs to be scrubbed before the caterers arrive. The maid is out back. She will show you where the cleaning supplies are. Get to work." She turned her back on me, answered her ringing phone, and walked away, leaving the heavy oak door swinging open behind her. I stood in my own foyer, breathing in the expensive scent of vanilla candles and roasted rosemary chicken. The walls were lined with new photos. Photos of Trevor on a golf course, photos of Evelyn on a beach in Florida, photos of Evelyn's mother, Beatrice, holding a glass of champagne in a manicured garden. My father's framed portrait, the one my mother had kept on the mantel for 9 years, was gone. In its place hung a cheap wooden sign that read, "Live, Laugh, Love." I walked through the kitchen, past the counter piled high with gourmet cheeses and expensive wine, and stepped out onto the patio. And that was when I found my mother on her knees, scrubbing concrete in 35-degree weather. "Kieran," she gasped, her hands trembling as she reached for my arms. "Please, do not make a scene. They have been so stressed. Trevor is working on a major new contract, and Evelyn's mother has been so helpful with the house." "Mom," I said, my voice dead calm as I pulled her gently to her feet. "Show me your room." She tried to lead me to the stairs, but her hip locked up and she winced, clutching her left leg. She led me past the laundry room, through a narrow door, and into the sunroom. The sunroom was freezing. A single cheap space heater sat in the corner, huming weakly against the draft from the glass walls. A folding cot was pushed against the wall, covered in a thin, worn blanket. Stacked next to the cot were 3 cardboard boxes labeled "Clara's Things" in Evelyn's sharp black handwriting. On the windowsill, next to a plastic bottle of dish soap and a stack of dirty rags, sat my father's framed portrait. And on the refrigerator, held by a magnet from a local car wash, was a laminated sheet of paper. I walked over and read it. "Weekly schedule," it read at the top. "Clara, laundry Monday and Thursday, bathrooms Tuesday, patio and kitchen daily, dinner prep by 5 o'clock. There were little black check marks next to each task, written in Evelyn's neat, rounded handwriting. My mother had a laminated chore chart in the house I bought her. As I stared at the paper, the heavy garage door rumbled under our feet, and my mother's hand flew to her collar, her face draining of all color. "That's Trevor," she whispered, her voice cracking with a terrifying, desperate panic. "Kieran, please, be nice to him. He gets so loud when people argue about money. Please." My brother walked through the kitchen door, carrying a box of gourmet cupcakes. He froze when he saw me standing next to the refrigerator, his eyes darting to my duffel bag and then to my face. He chose to laugh. It was a loud, booming, fake sound that echoed off the high ceilings. "Kieran, look at you," he said, dropping the cupcakes on the counter and extending a hand that I did not take. "The great surgeon has finally returned to the real world. Mel, look who decided to grace us with his presence." Evelyn walked in, her phone still clutched in her hand, her expression turning into a cold, defensive glare as she realized who I actually was. "You should have called, Kieran," she said, her voice lose all of its sugar. "We would have prepared the house, but as you can see, we are in the middle of preparing for a very important event. We don't really have the space for a guest right now." "What guest room?" I asked, looking around the massive kitchen. "The house has 4 bedrooms, Trevor. Where is our mother sleeping?" Trevor's face hardened, his shoulder muscles tightening under his cashmere sweater. "The stairs are bad for her knee, Kieran. We moved her down here for her own safety. It was a family decision." "A family decision," I said, taking a step closer to him. "And whose family decision was it to put her on a laminated chore chart?" "We all contribute, Kieran," Trevor snarled, his voice rising as he tried to use his height to intimidate me. "You wouldn't understand because you are never here. You just throw money at problems and think you are a hero. I am the one living here, doing the physical work, managing this estate. We keep Clara on a healthy routine," Evelyn added, stepping between us, her eyes narrowing. "Seniors thrive on structure. If you have an issue with how we run this household, you are welcome to discuss it with us on Monday. But right now, we have 6 members of the Orchard Park Development Board arriving in less than 2 hours. I need this kitchen cleared, and I need Clara to finish the patio." I looked at my brother. I looked at Evelyn. I felt my heart rate slow down to a steady, clinical 60 beats per minute. "I need to run to the bank," I said quietly, picking up my duffel bag. "Mom, put on your warm coat. We are going for a drive." "She can't leave," Evelyn screamed. "The catering trays need to be set up." "She is coming with me," I said, and my voice carried the exact quiet authority I use when I order a surgical team to prep an operating room. Evelyn stepped back, her mouth opening in shock, but she didn't say another word. We walked out to my rental car, and my mother sat in the passenger seat, her hands clutched tightly in her lap as she stared out the window. She didn't speak for the first 10 minutes of the drive. She just let the heat from the dashboard vents wash over her frozen face. I drove straight to the Orchard Park branch of First National Bank. I asked the manager for 14 months of printed bank statements for my mother's personal checking account. While the printer was running in the back office, I looked at my mother's hands. They were still stained with soot. The statements came off the printer warm. I sat at a mahogany desk in the private office and went through them line by line, my eyes scanning the transactions with clinical precision. My mother's Social Security check of $1,860 landed on the 2nd of every single month. And on the 3rd of every month, like clockwork, there was a $600 cash withdrawal. "Trevor collects it," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the office lights. "He said it was for my share of the groceries and the utilities. He said that since I was living there, I needed to contribute my fair share so the family holding company could keep the house running." "Your share," I said, my voice dangerously calm. But that wasn't the worst of it. 3 months ago, a store credit card had been opened in Clara Vance's name. The balance on the card was $3,900. The charges were for a luxury day spa in Buffalo, a high-end hair salon, a designer boutique in the village, and 3 dinner tabs at an expensive French restaurant that were each the size of a monthly car payment. My mother had not been inside a beauty salon since my father's funeral, and she would rather cut her own hair with sewing shears than spend $40 on a lunch. Evelyn. She needed to use the card for some business expenses, my mother whispered, tears finally spilling over her wrinkled cheeks. She said she would pay it back when Trevor's contract cleared, but then she got angry when I asked about the statements. She told me I was being ungrateful after they took me in. I folded the statements, placed them into my leather portfolio, and turned to the bank manager. "Remove Trevor Vance from this account immediately," I ordered. "Freeze the old account, transfer the remaining balance to a new, secure account under my mother's name and mine, and flag every single transaction for manual review. I also want to file a formal dispute for every charge on this store card. Of course, Mr. Vance, the manager said, his face pale as he looked at the raw, soot-stained hands of the 67-year-old woman sitting next to me. While my mother was signing the papers with her slow, careful cursive, I noticed a small, folded piece of paper sticking out of the pocket of her coat. It was a brochure for the Green Valley Senior Apartments, a low-income housing complex on the edge of town. I pulled it out gently. Tucked inside was a receipt for a $75 deposit to hold a spot on their waiting list, dated 3 weeks ago. "It is a very nice place, Kieran," my mother whispered, trying to smile through her tears. They let you keep 2 small flower pots on the windowsill. I thought if I moved there, Trevor and Evelyn wouldn't have to worry about me anymore, and they could have the big house all to themselves. I didn't want to be a burden." I looked at the receipt. I looked at the $75 she had saved in $1s and $5 bills, hiding them from her own son so she could buy her freedom in a concrete box that allowed her 2 flower pots. I folded the brochure, slipped it into my breast pocket next to my passport, and looked my mother in the eyes. "Nobody is moving into a senior apartment, Mom," I said, my voice completely steady. "The only people moving tonight are the ones living on the 2nd floor." We drove straight to Arthur Pendleton's law office in downtown Buffalo. Arthur was waiting for us in his conference room, a thick, navy blue folder sitting on the polished oak table in front of him. "We have the trust documents ready, Kieran," Arthur said, adjusting his glasses as he looked at my mother. "The Orchard Park property is being transferred into an irrevocable life estate trust today. Clara Vance is the sole beneficiary. She has the absolute legal right to occupy, manage, and control the property for the duration of her natural life. No creditor, no bank, and no family member can ever challenge her occupancy." "Good," I said. "Now, Arthur, I need 3 formal, legal letters of immediate revocation of permission to occupy the property, effective at 9 o'clock tonight." Arthur paused, his pen hovering over the document. "Kieran, a standard eviction usually requires 30 days' notice under New York state law. However, since Trevor and his family have never paid rent, do not have a written lease, and have been occupying the property strictly as temporary guests, they are legally classified as licensees. Under the law, a license to occupy can be revoked immediately, at any time, without prior notice, if there is evidence of elder abuse, financial exploitation, or property damage." I laid the bank statements and the store card receipts on the table. "There is your evidence," I said, "and here is another detail." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a printout that I had found on the kitchen island next to Evelyn's catering clipboard before we left. It was a printed article from an online portal about dog training and animal dominance. "I found this on the kitchen counter," I told Arthur, pointing to the text. "According to animal behaviorists, S1168.txt, a pack leader establishes total control over a rival by systematically shrinking their physical territory, blocking their access to natural light, and forcing them to perform repetitive physical tasks until they accept their place at the bottom of the hierarchy. They didn't just exploit her, Arthur. They used literal animal psychology to break my mother's spirit in the house I bought her." Arthur read the printout, his jaw tightening as he stared at the words verbatim. He looked at my mother's soot-stained knuckles, and then he looked at me. "I will draft the notices immediately," Arthur said, his voice flat with a quiet, legal fury. "And I will have a licensed process server deliver them to the house at precisely 8:30 tonight. Kieran, do you want me to coordinate with the local police department?" "No," I said, checking my watch. It was 4:15. "I will handle the scene myself. Just give me the papers." By 5 o'clock, the trust was fully executed. The deed was transferred, and the 3 revocation notices were sealed in heavy yellow legal envelopes. I also had a legally binding promissory repayment note for $12,300, drafted by Arthur, demanding a monthly payment of $250 from Trevor until the stolen cash and credit card debt were fully repaid. I parked my mother at a quiet diner down the road from the house, bought her a warm bowl of chicken noodle soup and a hot tea, and sat with her. "Mom," I said, leaning across the table, "tonight there is going to be a confrontation. I am going to end this. I need you to stand next to me, and I need you to hold your head up. Can you do that for me?" She stared into her teacup for a long, heavy minute. She looked at her raw, swollen knuckles, and then she looked at the Green Valley Senior Housing brochure sitting on the table. "I have been embarrassed for 14 months, Kieran," she said, her voice turning surprisingly strong, carrying the grit of the woman who had raised 2 kids on a seamstress's salary. "One more night of embarrassment won't kill me, but it might just save my life." "That's my mom," I said. At 5:30, we drove back to the house on Maplewood Court. The catering vans were already lined up in the driveway. The house was bathed in warm, glowing light, and the scent of expensive wine and roasted meat drifted out onto the cold street. Evelyn was in the kitchen, screaming at one of the caterers about the temperature of the appetizers, while her mother, Beatrice, sat at the dining table, sipping a glass of Chardonnay and polishing a silver fork. When Evelyn saw us walk through the door, she marched over, her face red with rage. "Where have you been?" she hissed, pointing a finger at my mother's chest. "The guests are arriving in exactly 30 minutes. Clara, get that dirty coat off and put the black apron back on. I need you to stand by the kitchen island and make sure the hot platters are rotated every 10 minutes. And you," she turned her glare to me, "get your bags out of the hallway. You are ruining the aesthetic of the entryway." I did not answer her. I walked over to the hook by the pantry, picked up the black apron my mother had been wearing, and tied it around my own waist. Evelyn froze, her mouth opening in utter confusion. What do you think you are doing?" "Mom is off duty tonight, Evelyn," I said, giving her a calm, polite smile. "I will be serving the guests myself. I want to make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve." She stared at me, then let out a sharp, nervous laugh. "Whatever. Just don't embarrass us. If you want to play the martyr, do it quietly." At 6:30 sharp, the doorbell rang. The guests arrived in a wave of expensive winter coats, silk scarves, and loud, pretentious laughter. There were 6 of them, all members of the local country club board and the Orchard Park Historical Society. Evelyn led them on a grand tour of the colonial, her voice carrying that bright, false luxury. "Yes, we bought at the absolute perfect time," she boasted, waving her glass toward the high ceilings. $850,000. Trevor has such magnificent plans for the backyard. We are putting in a custom fire pit right where those old, messy rose bushes were. It is going to be a stunning entertainment space." "Those rose bushes?" one of the church ladies in a fur coat asked, frowning. "I always thought they looked so lovely from the street. The sweet older woman who lives here is always tending to them." Evelyn let out a polished, rehearsed chuckle. "Oh, you mean Clara? Trevor's mother. She stays with us, you know. We took her in after her health started failing. She likes to help out around the place. It keeps her young. She is practically our head of household staff." A few of the guests laughed politely. My mother's oldest friend, Martha, who had arrived with the group, did not laugh. She sat at the edge of the dining table, her eyes locked onto Clara, who was sitting quietly in a chair in the sunroom, her hands folded in her lap. Evelyn's mother, Beatrice, deep into her second glass of wine, leaned toward the guest next to her. "Yes, it is such a blessing for Clara. Family looking after family. We make sure she has a roof over her head and 3 hot meals. That is just how we raise our children." I stood by the buffet, pouring the $80 Cabernet into their crystal glasses, keeping my face completely expressionless. I counted their breaths. I measured the room. Trevor stood at the head of the table, his chest puffed out, basking in the attention of the local elite. He dinged his glass with a silver knife, gathering the eyes of the room. "To family," Trevor announced, raising his glass high. "To the ones who actually show up when the world gets hard. You know, some people choose to run away to the other side of the world to chase dollar bills and write a check once a year. But the ones under this roof, the ones who do the heavy lifting, the ones who build a real home, that is what family actually means." "Hear, hear," Beatrice cheered, clinking her glass. Evelyn smiled her thin, wire smile, looking straight at me as I stood by the kitchen door with the wine pitcher. "You can toast too, Kieran. Or do you need to run back to the kitchen to check on the dessert?" One of the club board members looked at me, then at Trevor. "Wait, Trevor, isn't that your brother? The surgeon from Singapore?" "Oh, yes," Evelyn answered for him, her voice dripping with pity. "Kieran works overseas. He is very quiet. He doesn't really understand how we do things here." And that was when my mother stood up. Clara Vance, 67 years old, stood at the entrance of her own dining room, her chin held high, her voice carrying a deep, echoing strength that silenced the entire table. "His name is Kieran, my mother said, looking her older son directly in the eyes. "And he is the only man in this family who has ever taken care of me." "Clara, sit back down," Trevor barked, his voice dropping all of its charm as his face flushed a dark, angry red. "You are embarrassing yourself. Go back to the sunroom." "No, Trevor," I said, untying the black apron and laying it flat over the back of an empty leather chair. "She is not going back to the sunroom, but you are." I walked over to my duffel bag in the hallway, pulled out the thick yellow legal folder, and walked back into the dining room. I dropped it onto the center of the tablecloth, right next to the roasted chicken and the crystal glasses. The room went completely dead silent. "What is this nonsense, Kieran?" Trevor sneered, though his eyes darted nervously to the heavy legal seals on the folder. "We are in the middle of a dinner party. Get this trash off the table." "Evelyn," I said, keeping my voice at a calm, clinical handoff volume. "A few minutes ago, you told your guests that you bought this house at the perfect time. Why don't you open that folder and read the name on the deed to the table?" Evelyn laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound, but she didn't reach for the paper. "This is our house. Trevor and I coordinate everything." "Read it, Trevor," I said. My brother reached out, his hand shaking slightly as he pulled the top document out of the folder. He was smiling when he started reading, the arrogant, smug smile of a man who believed the world was his playground. And then, I watched the smile die. The color left his face in one smooth, sickening drain, top to bottom. It was the exact grayish-white color a patient's skin turns when their blood pressure drops to 0 on my operating table. What is this?" Trevor whispered, his voice cracking as he stared at the paper. "Read the name of the owner, Trevor," I said. He couldn't speak. His lips just moved silently. Evelyn snatched the paper from his hand, her eyes scanning the page, her chest heaving as she read the grantee line. "Kieran Marie Vance, sole owner, fee simple." "No," Evelyn gasped, her voice rising to a shrill, manic pitch. "No, this is impossible. Clara told us she put the down payment on this house. She said she was the owner." "My mother told you that because she didn't want my older brother to feel like a complete failure," I said, looking at the shocked faces of the country club guests. "I bought this house 2 years ago. I paid $300,000 down, and my bank account pays every single penny of the mortgage. You have been living in my house for 14 months, Trevor, and you didn't even have the decency to let our mother sleep in her own bedroom." "Kieran, please," Beatrice stammered, her wine glass trembling in her hand. "This is a family misunderstanding. We can discuss this." "We are not discussing anything, Beatrice," I said, pulling out the second document. "As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, this house has been placed into an irrevocable life estate trust. My mother, Clara Vance, holds the absolute legal right to occupy and control this property for the rest of her life. No one can sell it, no one can mortgage it, and no one can live here without her express, written permission." I turned to my brother and slid the 3 yellow legal envelopes across the table, knocking over a crystal wine glass. The deep red liquid pooled across the white tablecloth like blood. "And these," I said, "are immediate revocations of your permission to occupy this property. On the advice of my counsel, and based on clear evidence of financial exploitation and elder abuse, your license to stay in this house is revoked, effective at 9 o'clock tonight." "You can't do this," Evelyn screamed, slamming her hands on the table. "This is our home. We have our things here, our furniture." "The furniture you stole from my mother's bedroom when you banished her to a drafty sunroom next to the washing machine?" I asked, pulling out the bank statements and laying them flat on the table next to the spill. "Or are you talking about the $12,300 you systematically drained from her Social Security account over the last 14 months? Martha, my mother's church friend, stood up from the table, her face pale with disgust. "Evelyn, is this true? Did you take Clara's money?" "It was for rent," Evelyn shrieked, her eyes wild as she looked around the room for an ally. "We are family. We manage the estate."
She agreed to it.
"She agreed to it because you put her on painkillers in a hospital bed after her surgery and forced her to sign a healthcare proxy and a financial authorization form," I said, my voice cutting through her screams like a scalpel. "The bank has already frozen the accounts, Evelyn, and the dispute forms for the $3,900 you charged to her store card for your day spas and French dinners have already been filed with the fraud department." Trevor sank back into his chair, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. "Ohio and New York State have very clear laws regarding elder financial exploitation, Trevor. I continued, looking down at my brother. It is a Class D felony. You have exactly 2 choices tonight. Option A, you, Evelyn, and Beatrice pack your bags and are out of this house by 9 o'clock tonight. You sign this repayment agreement, promising to pay my mother $250 a month until the $12,300 is fully returned, and you leave the keys on the counter. Option B. At 9 o'clock, the Orchard Park Police Department arrives with an eviction filing, a grand larceny complaint, and 6 prominent members of your country club board who have just witnessed your confession. The dining room was so quiet, you could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. One by one, the guests stood up. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't offer their condolences to Trevor or Evelyn. They just grabbed their winter coats in silence and walked out the front door, Martha pausing only to press my mother's hand and whisper, "God bless you, Clara. We will see you on Sunday." By 8:15, the house was empty of guests, and the only sound was the frantic, screaming match coming from the master bedroom upstairs as Trevor and Evelyn began ripping their clothes off the hangers. "This is your fault!" Evelyn's voice shrieked through the floorboards. "You told me your brother was just a stupid doctor who didn't care about the property. You told me we would inherit this place when she passed." "You're the one who wanted the $80,000 SUV," Trevor roared back. "You're the one who opened the credit cards in her name. I told you we should have waited." Downstairs, my mother sat at the oak dining table, her raw hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea that June, her church neighbor who had stayed behind to help, had made for her. She looked up at the ceiling, then at me. "Are you okay, Mom?" I asked, kneeling beside her chair. She let out a long, slow breath, and for the first time in 7 years, the heavy, constant tension in her shoulders finally vanished. She gave me a quiet, tired smile. "I am more than okay, Kieran. I feel like I can finally breathe." At 8:30 on the dot, the doorbell rang. It was the locksmith I had hired from the bank lobby. He was a quiet, professional man carrying a heavy tool bag and a cordless drill. "Locks on every exterior door, sir?" he asked, looking at me. "Every single one," I said, "and I want the key codes changed immediately." As the drill began to hum against the front door frame, Evelyn came down the stairs dragging 2 massive suitcases. Her hair was unkempt, her silk robe replaced by a wrinkled tracksuit, her face twisted in a look of pure, concentrated hatred. She stopped at the console table in the hallway, lifted the brass keyring, and threw it hard against the hardwood floor, leaving a deep, jagged scratch in the oak. "You're a monster, Kieran," she whispered, her eyes burning. "You destroyed this family." I picked up the keys, tossed them into the trash can next to the door, and held the heavy oak door open for her. "No, Evelyn," I said, my voice dead calm. "I just took back what was mine. Drive safe." She stormed out into the freezing night, followed by her mother, Beatrice, who was clutching a box of expensive wine glasses she had tried to steal from the pantry. Trevor came down last. He looked smaller, older, and completely broken. He didn't look at my mother, and he didn't look at me. He just held the signed repayment agreement in his shaking hand, dropped it on the kitchen island, and walked out into the cold. At 9 o'clock exactly, the locksmith handed me 2 fresh sets of silver keys. The deadbolts turned over with a deep, solid, oiled click. The house was ours again. 3 months have passed since that freezing Saturday night, and the ground under our feet has completely rebuilt itself. Trevor and Evelyn are currently renting a cramped basement apartment on the south side of Buffalo. Trevor took a night shift job as a dispatcher for a local trucking company, the exact same job he used to mock me for, and the first $250 repayment check arrived in my mother's bank account on the 1st of the month, right on time. I do not care about his apology. I only care about his autopay. Evelyn's mother, Beatrice, is living with her other daughter, who reportedly keeps her on a very strict, laminated chore chart of her own. My mother is back in her pew at church every Sunday morning, sitting next to Martha and June. The beautiful rose bushes have been brought out from the dark corner by the garage and replanted in the very center of the backyard, the absolute sunniest spot on the property, right where Trevor's fire pit was going to be. They have already started throwing out new, green canes under the spring sun. The Green Valley Senior Housing brochure came out of my pocket on my last morning in town. I offered it to my mother, letting her make the choice. She took it, looked at the $75 receipt, and tore it cleanly in half before throwing it into the compost bin. "It will make excellent fertilizer for the roses next month," she said with a laugh. I signed a new, rotating contract with my hospital before I flew back out. 8 weeks on, 4 weeks home. My 4 weeks belong entirely to the master bedroom on Maplewood Court, where the beautiful rose wallpaper my mother picked out is going back on the walls. My brother always believed that because I was quiet, because I lived thousands of miles away, and because I didn't parade my success, I was weak and easy to exploit. He believed that money and status were the only things that commanded respect. He was wrong. The most powerful thing you can do when people treat you like you are nothing is to let them believe it. Let them build their entire trap around their own arrogance. Because when the papers are finally on the table and the new deadbolts click into place, they won't just realize they lost their power over you. They will realize they never had any to begin with. Thank you for listening and watching until the final sentence. All situations in this story are fictional and created solely for your entertainment and reflection. We hope it reminds you that the people who try to pull you down are usually the ones who are terrified of how high you can actually reach. Once you understand your true worth, access to your life is a privilege that must be earned with absolute respect and never given away for free.